December 6, 1917. 8:45 in the morning. The people of Halifax, Nova Scotia, gather along the waterfront and peer from windows overlooking the harbour. A ship is burning in the Narrows, the slim channel connecting the inner basin to the Atlantic. Smoke billows black and thick. Flames climb the rigging. The vessel drifts slowly toward the Richmond district, the working-class north end of the city. Residents watch, curious but calm. Fires at sea are rare but not unheard of. No one knows what the ship is carrying. No one suspects that in 20 minutes, their world will end. The burning ship is the SS Mont-Blanc, a French cargo steamer. She departed New York 4 days earlier, bound for Bordeaux to supply the Western Front. Her manifest is a floating bomb, 2,300 tons of picric acid, 200 tons of TNT, 10 tons of gun cotton, and 35 tons of benzol fuel stored on deck in steel drums. Together, nearly 3,000 tons of high explosives. The Mont-Blanc is not marked as a munitions carrier. No red flag. No warning. She looks like any other freighter. The harbor pilot, Francis Mackey, knows what she carries. So does Captain Mlomedek and his crew. But no one ashore does. 20 minutes earlier, at 8:10, the Mont-Blanc entered the harbor, moving slowly through the anti-submarine nets. At the same time, the SS Imo, a Norwegian relief ship bound for Belgium, steamed outward through the Narrows. The channel is narrow. Protocol requires ships to pass port to port, left to left. But a series of misunderstandings and navigational errors brought the two vessels onto a collision course. Whistles blew. Engines reversed. Too late. At 8:45, the Imo's bow struck the Mont-Blanc's starboard side, tearing open her hull near the benzol drums. Sparks ignited the fuel. Fire erupted instantly. Captain Lomedek knew immediately what would happen. The fire was spreading toward the cargo holds. There was no way to stop it. He ordered his crew to abandon ship. The men lowered 2 lifeboats and rowed hard for the Dartmouth shore, across the harbor. They shouted warnings in French, but few understood. The Mont-Blanc, now unmanned and ablaze, drifted with the tide toward Pier 6 in Richmond. The Imo backed away, damaged but intact, and drifted toward the opposite shore. Onlookers gathered. Firefighters from the Patricia, a naval tugboat, prepared to board the burning ship. No one told them what was inside. By 9 o'clock, thousands lined the waterfront in crowded windows. The burning ship was a spectacle. Children stood on rooftops. Workers paused on their way to the docks. The Mont-Blanc drifted closer to Pier 6, her hull glowing orange, her masts trailing flame. The crew of the British cruiser HMS Highflyer dispatched a motorboat to investigate. Firefighters aboard the Patricia tied up alongside, preparing hoses. Telephone operators in the Richmond Exchange watched from their second-floor windows. In homes and schools across the North End, faces pressed against glass. No alarm had been raised. No evacuation ordered. The clock ticked toward 9:05. At 9:04 and 35 seconds, the fire reached the Mont-Blanc's cargo. The ship disintegrated in a white flash. The explosion released energy equivalent to roughly 2,800 tons of TNT, the largest man-made blast in history to that point. The fireball rose over 2 miles into the sky. A pressure wave radiated outward at more than 1,000 miles per hour. The Mont-Blanc's anchor shank, weighing half a ton, flew 2 miles south. Her cannon landed 3 miles away. A tsunami surged across the harbor. The sound was heard over 100 miles distant. In an instant, the north end of Halifax ceased to exist. Everything within a half-mile radius was obliterated. Richmond, the densest neighborhood, was leveled. Wooden homes splintered into kindling. Brick buildings collapsed. The Richmond railway station, the sugar refinery, the cotton factory, all reduced to rubble. The blast wave shattered windows across the entire city and as far as Truro, 60 miles away. Shards of glass became projectiles, blinding and maiming hundreds. The tsunami that followed the explosion swept ships inland and drowned survivors struggling in the wreckage. Fires ignited across the ruins, fed by shattered gas lines and overturned stoves. A blizzard was coming. The death toll was catastrophic. Nearly 2,000 people were killed instantly or died from injuries in the hours and days that followed. 9,000 were wounded. Hundreds were blinded, many of them children who had watched the burning ship from windows. Entire families vanished. The Richmond Printing Company's staff, the crew of the Patricia, the telephone operators, gone. Nurses, firefighters, sailors, dock workers, schoolchildren. The explosion did not discriminate. In some homes, searchers found only scattered fragments. Identification was often impossible. Mass graves were dug in the frozen ground. That night, a winter storm struck. 16 inches of snow fell on the ruins. Temperatures plunged below freezing. Survivors huddled in the wreckage, trapped under beams and debris, calling for help that could not reach them. Fires still burned in scattered pockets, but the snow smothered most. The wounded lay in makeshift shelters, churches, schools, undamaged homes, without heat or supplies. Hospitals were overwhelmed. Doctors operated by candlelight. The city's infrastructure was shattered. Water mains broken. Rail lines twisted. Telegraph cables severed. For a few desperate hours, Halifax was cut off from the world, buried in snow and ash. By dawn on December 7, help began to arrive. Boston dispatched a relief train carrying doctors, nurses, and medical supplies. It arrived within 24 hours, the first of many. Trains came from across Canada and the United States, bringing food, clothing, blankets, and building materials. The Massachusetts Halifax Relief Committee sent 10 railway cars loaded with glass to replace the shattered windows. Volunteers poured in. Military personnel, clergy, citizens from neighboring towns all joined the rescue effort. They dug through rubble, searching for survivors. They carried the wounded to hospitals. They built temporary shelters. The work was grim, exhausting, and unending. Stories of survival emerged from the chaos. A baby was found alive in the ashes, pulled from beneath her dead mother. A man trapped under a collapsed roof was freed after 30 hours. Some survived by sheer chance, a last-minute errand, a delayed departure, a decision to stay home. Others survived by proximity to sturdy structures or by being shielded by geography. Entire blocks were wiped out while neighboring streets stood. The randomness was haunting. Survivors spoke of the silence that followed the blast, the eerie absence of sound before the screaming began. Many carried scars, visible and invisible, for the rest of their lives. In the weeks that followed, an official inquiry convened to determine responsibility. The hearings were contentious. Lawyers for the Mont-Blanc argued that the Imo had violated navigation rules. The Imo's owners blamed the Mont-Blanc for poor seamanship. The harbor pilot, Francis Mackey, defended his decisions. Witnesses testified. Charts were examined. Ultimately, the inquiry found fault on both sides but assigned primary blame to the Mont-Blanc's captain and pilot. The decision was later overturned on appeal. The legal battles continued for years. But no verdict could restore what was lost or explain the full chain of errors that led to catastrophe. Rebuilding Halifax took years. The Hygrostone district, named for the concrete blocks used in construction, rose from Richmond's ashes. Planners designed it with wide streets, green spaces, and fire-resistant materials. Thousands of new homes were built. The port was restored. By 1920, much of the physical damage had been repaired. But the city was changed. The explosion had killed nearly 1% of Halifax's population. Families were fractured. A generation of children grew up with scars and trauma. Memorials were erected. December 6 became a day of remembrance. The story passed into history, but for those who lived it, the memory never faded. The Halifax explosion remained the largest man-made detonation in history until the atomic bomb tests of 1945. Its scale was unprecedented. The blast was felt in Cape Breton, over 200 miles away. Seismographs in Denver recorded the shock. The explosion created a crater in the harbor floor and reshaped the coastline. Scientists and military planners studied the event for decades, drawing lessons about blast effects, structural failure, and mass casualty response. Halifax became a case study in disaster management. The city's experience informed emergency protocols worldwide. It was a tragedy that taught the world how fragile civilization is. Today, the Halifax explosion is remembered as one of Canada's defining tragedies. Monuments stand at Fort Needham, overlooking the blast site. The Maritime Museum of the Atlantic preserves artifacts, twisted metal, charred wood, personal belongings. Each December 6th, a ceremony is held. A moment of silence at 9:04. The city sends a Christmas tree to Boston each year, a gesture of thanks for the swift relief effort. Descendants of survivors tell the stories. Historians continue to research and document. The explosion shaped Halifax's identity, a reminder of resilience and the cost of war. It is history that must not be forgotten. On the morning of December 6, 1917, the people of Halifax watched a ship burn. They did not know they were witnessing the final moments before disaster. They did not know the names Mont-Blanc or Imo would be etched in history. They could not imagine that in seconds, their city would be erased. But they stood and watched because humans are drawn to fire, to spectacle, to the unknown. In those 20 minutes between collision and detonation, Halifax was a city suspended between two worlds, the one they knew and the one about to vanish. The explosion changed everything. But the watching, the waiting, the ordinary mourning, that is where the story begins and ends.